talking about in this second Sicha of the Rebbe on the Fabrengen, that he was addressing the fact that they asked, if it's so, how do you say that there's a chiddush in the fact that there's many tzimtzumim, many levels of the earth, shalifnei tzimtzum, based on the mashalim that the Rebbe gave in the Maimer and so on, should be very obvious, should be very, it should be a very simple thing. What's the chiddush of Chassidus? So he says that obviously the Eibishter can do anything. The Rebbe says, just because we see this way in our world, that doesn't mean that it has to be that way by the Eibishter. The Eibishter could have created anything and everything, whichever way he wanted to create it. And it could have been that everything should come directly from Atzmus without the oil being first in the Atzmus and Kolul and so on. There's nothing that's, he's Kol Yachol. So now the Rebbe is going to elaborate on this a little bit more from the fact that we know Mipsariach Zelakah. The whole time we bring the example, from my flesh I will perceive godliness. So this also, we have to look at how it is by our flesh. So again, we're holding on page 8, Ois Gimel, page Memches in the Hebrew. So he says, Nois Gimel, 4th paragraph from the top, actually the 5th paragraph from the top. We can't ask a question. It's an open pasuk. It's an explicit pasuk. Let us make man in our form and in our likeness or image. In other words, that the person down here reflects what's above. So if we find something by us in the way the nefesh develops and so on, it needs to reflect something similar in the Eibishter as well. My flesh I will perceive godliness. And therefore, since this in the soul of a person. So the powers were initially, the soul powers are initially part of the person's nefesh. And afterwards it's drawn down and comes down by chain descent from one level to another level, till they become clothed in the limbs and organs of the body. Moving from this understood, that this is also the same in the revelations that take place above. What is the novelty in this? In Kabbalah, in Chassidus, to say, wow, give a look, it's a big Chiddush, it's an amazing Chiddush that we come up with, that the oil was in the Atzmus, and then it had to come out, and therefore it had to be Tzimtzum, and so on. So the Rebbe says, that's also not a question. It's obvious that this question, there's no room for such a question whatsoever. Concerning many matters, Yadua, it's known, the fact that we apply the form of Adam above, like we say, Nasa Adam mitzalmeinu kidmuseinu, let us make an Adam in our form and in our likeness. So just like there's an Adam down here, there is an Adam ha'elyon, like we have the expression the whole time of Chassidus. But where do we say Adam ha'elyon? Hurak bedargis nemuchas belakus. We usually apply it, or concerning many things we apply it, like he says, only in lower levels of godliness. As opposed to higher levels, we apply what it says in a different pasuk, Loi Adamhu, that he's not Adam. Sometimes we will use it concerning Atzilus versus higher than Atzilus. That from the perspective of Atzilus, where over there we have the Tzir Adam, we have Seichel and Midas and the Spheres and so on, so the situation is such and such. But when you look at the level of Keser or higher than Atzilus, Soiv Kolal, then we say, Loi Adamhu, that he's not, doesn't have the form and the description and limitations of an Adam, he's beyond that. So just like we say this concerning other topics in Chassidus, the same thing concerning this issue about Tzimtzumim and the Eirakol Be'etzem and the idea of the levels before the Tzimtzum edition. The same thing we could have said concerning the chain order of descent. The fact that every single level is drawn down and comes down via chain descent from a level that's higher than it. Dugmas ha'ishtalshus shebekoich adam, which reflects and is similar to the way it is within the person's powers, that it also comes down the way of ishtalshus. So we would apply that in the oil misalyonim hurak bedargas nemuchas. It's only in the lower levels of the spiritual realms. Bedargas halakus shabasiya, and the levels of godliness that's in the world of asiya. Ayafilu biyitzira bria. We would only say this in the worlds of Yetzirah and Bria. Avaloi Batzilus, we might say this doesn't even apply in Atzilus, let alone what we're talking about over here, Iron Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum. Okay, and the fact that we know that even in Atzilus this is so, it's only because it's brought down in Kabbalah that the idea of Ishtalshlus is to be found in Atzilus and higher than Atzilus. That's the only reason we know to apply it over there. On our own, we might only apply it to the lower worlds. We might only apply it to Asiya or the most Bria. The only reason we know of this, it's a chiddush. We need to be told this. Kabbalah needs to tell us this. And also, and to tell us that these levels of Ishtalshlus apply in the highest level of revelation after the first Tzimtzum. So we only know this because Kabbalah told us this. On our own, we can never say this. The most highest revelation after the Tzimtzum, which is called the Reishis HaKav, the beginning of that line that emanated after the Tzimtzum Harishon. Is not a new being from Hashem's essence, that Hashem created something new without any connection to prior. How do we know that it's not that way? But rather there's a light that precedes the Kav, precedes the Tzimtzum. Initially the infinite light of Hashem filled the entire possibility of space, and from that Oyer itself that filled all possible space came out the Kav after the Tzimtzum. But why do we know about it? Because Kabbalah tells us. Top of the last page, but even after we know about this, there's still no proof whatsoever. Also the light that filled all possibility for space, that this came from the light that is higher than it. In other words, we know that the Kav came from the Ein Sof that was filled all possible space. But where did this light that filled all possible space come from? Maybe it not. Maybe it didn't come from a light that's higher than it. It could be that Hashem's essence created this light, just like Hashem's essence is responsible for creating the Yesh Hagashmi. Even after it's brought down Kabbalah, that there's a Tzimtzum even prior to the Tzimtzum Harishon, like we said before, that Kabbalah reveals to us, and Chassidus talks about it in rare places, that there are Tzimtzumim prior to the Tzimtzum Harishon. Skip the parentheses again. I know this means telling us that even the light that filled all possible space came from a light that was higher than it. There's still no, we're not forced to say so you've established, yes, Kabbalah tells you that higher than the light that filled all possible space, there was a light preceding that. But that light, in other words, level number 2, higher than the Ersha, you don't know where that came from. And there's room to say that this light that preceded the light that filled all possible space, that is a new creation that came from Hashem's Etzem, and not that it was initially part of Hashem's Etzem. Va'adrab, even more so, not just, you could say this way, you could say that way. Mitzad HaSeichel, from the perspective of intellect, mistaber yoser loymar, the inyan ha'ishtalshlus rak la'achri sheyesh kvar bechinas gilui oir. That makes more sense that the chain order of descent would apply only after there's a level of a revelation of light. You have a light revealed, so then there's different stages in the revelation. There's a revelation that's beyond filling all possible space. Then there's a further revelation that fills all possible space. Came the Alter Rebbe and revealed something new. Even the most highest light. The way it comes down is in a way of a chain descent. This means to say, the only thing in everything Hashem made that's completely new without a previous source is Yesh. The Yesh HaGashmi, at a certain degree the Yesh HaRuchni, that's something that didn't exist prior. That is something that's completely and totally created, not in the way of Ishtalshlus. Belishum ilu v'siba, without any prior cause. B'dugmas ha'atzma she'ena ol b'eze ilah, similar to Hashem's very essence, that doesn't have any prior cause. Mash'enki ha'giluim, as opposed to all the different revelations in Oir and so on that we're talking about, Gam Gilu Hachinayla, even the most highest revelation, like this light that preceded the light that filled all possible space, Yesh Le'ila V'siba, has a prior cause and a prior sourse. Heinrich Shekol Tchil V'Moed was initially part of Hashem's state of Mo'er. And as we said before, Mo'er is not the highest thing, but there's beyond Mo'er, there's L'mayla Yoser Ba'atzmus, it was even higher, it was in part of Hashem's essence. And the way the Or came out of Hashem's essence till it came down a revealed light is similar to Ilah V'ol, cause and effect. Since that is the case, move on. Once the Alter Rebbe revealed that there were these stages, so it's understood logically that the way it came out of its source, how did it make that transition? How did it go from being part of Atzmus to being a Gilui Oyer? Had to be Tzimtzum, even though it's before the Tzimtzum edition. Calls them move on from all this understood. That the above mentioned thing, even the most highest revelation is through the Tzimtzum. Not only is this a novel new idea, that this novelty, this uftu, this chiddush is such a great chiddush, there is nothing like it whatsoever. If so, you can ask, so where did Alter Rebbe take this from? So that's not our question. How did Alter Rebbe know about this amazing chiddush? That's not for us to delve into. Did he have proofs for this, for what it says in Kabbalah? Or the Alter Rebbe heard it from Moshe Rabbeinu when Moshe Rabbeinu received it on Har Sinai. Or the Alter Rebbe heard it from Hashem's Etzem. A Yiddish expression, wherever he took it from. Well, we hear that Alter Rebbe said something, we don't need any footnote saying, sourcing where the Alter Rebbe got it from. The Alter Rebbe has his ways of getting his information. And the Rebbe concludes in Ois Dalet, V'amaisa Ikir, action is what's primary. Each and every one of us should add and increase in the study of Torah, in a way of understanding and comprehension, according to the rules of study. What's the rules of study, the Rebbe says? And the Rebbe has explained this on different occasions. First, you take time to see the general idea. And only after dealing with the general idea, that's when we deal with the details of the matter.